Hello, seventh grade parents. Welcome to our virtual back to school night. Sorry we can't do this in person, and I hope that at some point during this school year we will be able to meet in person, face to face. So, a little bit about myself. I have not taught seventh grade in a few years. I have been strictly teaching eighth grade. This year I am teaching a section of seventh grade, and I'm very excited. As you can see, I have a lot of kids, which also means that I go to a lot of back to school nights. In fact, some of you may relate to this. When I go to back to school night with my wife, usually there are 3 different back to school nights that we have to attend. And when we attend the high school one, we actually have to split up, and we still don't get to see all of our children's classes, all their teachers. But when I do go to back to school nights, one thing I always notice, the common theme is boredom, and I'm really bad at being bored, which makes me relate to some of your kids really, really well. I'm a little ADD that way, I guess. But so my goal here is not to bore you too much. I'm going to try to be quick and try to be a little bit entertaining. And that's similar to the way I run my class. I don't want to bore your kids. So what you need to know about my class is that unless they are weird, your kids will have fun in my class. And I started I started using this Mikey from the Life commercial thing a few years ago for back to school. And I'm finding that more and more parents are getting too young to remember Mikey from the Life commercial. So for those of you who don't remember it, Mikey was a kid who didn't like anything, and he didn't want to try the Life cereal, but then he liked it. So the slogan was Mikey likes it, and they said unless they're weird, your kids will eat it. So unless they are weird, your kids will have fun in my class. And if they are weird, they're going to have more fun in my class because I am pretty weird, as you will probably know by the time we get done with this back to school night. And then you'll go tell your kids, hey, your English teacher's really weird. Anyway, I want kids to leave my class at the end of the year thinking critically and deeply, thinking for themselves, expressing original thoughts and ideas, not just regurgitating others that they've heard, and enjoying learning. In terms of kind of the housekeeping kind of stuff, students should do a few things daily. They should check email. They should get emails from Otis. All the communication is going to be via Otis. They should check in Otis the announcements and the class board. The Zoom meeting calendar will be there every day, so they need to make sure they're clicking on the correct period for their Zoom meetings so that they end up in the right class. And check lessons for things that they need to do independently, and check assessments for anything that they need to do and turn in. And Otis is new to all of us, so it's not going to be perfect at first. I know there are going to be some fails, and we're going to kind of have to be patient with each other to get those worked out. But I will be very, very understanding and patient with your kids as we start with Otis. So just please be very patient with me as well. The daily agenda will be posted in Otis every day. It'll look something like this, sometimes a little more creative because this is pretty robotic, but it'll have this information contained in it. The grades, unlike the last time we did distance learning, are real, not a drill. We are on an 8-point scale now, which is not a huge departure from the 4 levels of mastery that we just barely got used to. It's the same 4 levels of mastery, but now there's a little more specificity because we have a high level of mastery and a low level of mastery at each level. So if your kid is a 4 on an assignment, that means almost proficient as opposed to just being approaching, which means he could be closer to beginning or closer to proficient. So I think this is a step in the direction of being more specific with our communication. Reading is a huge part of my class. Obviously, it's a language arts class. But in addition to whatever we're reading in class, your student should always have a book that they're reading on their own for 20 minutes a day at least. For some kids, this is not difficult. I have a kid who wakes up with a book in his hand, goes to sleep with a book in his hand. But I have other kids who you kind of have to make them. So every kid's different that way. As you can see here, though, Rambo really likes Harper Lee. He's a big fan. So why do we read? If there's one thing you can do to help your students succeed academically, not just in language arts, but in every class, it's to have them reading for 20 minutes a day, because it helps them in so many other aspects. Kelly Gallagher said, "We believe in the value of challenging books, but when students only read core texts chosen by their teachers, read-aside occurs." So that means they need to be reading something that I didn't tell them to read. Um, Read-aside is not a real word, as some of you probably already shouted at the screen. It is not a word, but if you kind of break it down, you can figure out that it means giving up believing that reading is anything but meaningless work. It's kids who hate reading, okay? Um, the bottom line is that kids need to read something they haven't been assigned, and I have some research to support that. So reading 20 minutes at home makes a big difference. As you can see on the left, student A, the one with tons and tons of books in their little diagram, that kid is reading 20 minutes a day and scores in the 90th percentile on standardized tests. The middle kid, 5 minutes a day, so that probably averages out. They probably read one day and then they miss a day. That kid scores in the 50th percentile. Still okay. The kid who reads 1 minute per day, which to me, that's like reading the billboards as you're driving by them. Um, that kid is scoring in the 10th percentile on standardized tests. And I know some of you statistic people are, if you're like me, you're going, well, there are tons of variables here that we can't measure. Yes, that's true. There are tons of variables. But the most important thing we can look at here is that the type of people whose kids read 20 minutes a day have more successful kids in the long run. So let's try to be those people. That's my little soapbox. Another quote from Kelly Gallagher is, between 1996 and 2006, the average level of literacy required for all occupations rose by 14%. Okay, so it's on the rise. The level of literacy required is on the rise. Both dropouts and high school graduates demonstrate significantly worse reading skills than they did 10 years ago. So as of 2006, which is a little bit on the older side, but the literacy needed in the workplace was going up, and the levels of literacy achieved by people graduating high school or not going down. So we're going the opposite direction of where we need to be going. Finally, we get empathy through reading. When we read about other people, we can imagine ourselves into their position, and we can imagine what it's like being that person. That enables us to better understand people and better cooperate with them. So this is teaching your children to understand other people, which is something that we definitely need. In addition to reading, obviously in a language arts class, there's going to be writing. I believe that students should write every day in some form. That doesn't mean they're going to be writing a paragraph every day. It could mean that I'm going to give them a 2-minute, write as much as you can in 2 minutes about this topic, and then we're going to share them out. Sometimes it'll be that. Other times they will be writing for 2 weeks on one assignment and revising and going through the writing process. But they will be writing every single day. And on the right, I think my head is blocking it, but it says, I don't have bad handwriting. I have my own font. And ironically, there is a typo in my little meme. So your students will be writing quick writes, they'll be writing blogs, they'll be writing essays, they'll be doing a narrative, all kinds of different writing in my class. Final thoughts are about Otis, and these are where we're going to be a little redundant because I know all of the teachers are sharing this information, so I didn't want to make it the main focal point of this presentation. But you should check Otis often. Your child should check Otis even more often. Don't worry about Power School anymore. Your child needs to attend every day, just like if we were in school. We're trying to mock the school day, trying to do our best to parody it. So daily attendance is required. Work completion is required. Everything's going to be graded this year. The grades are going to count, and your student needs to be engaged with the learning process. Again, if you have any questions at any point, please feel free to email me anytime. My email is right here. That's not an I, it's an L. My first name is Logan. Feel free to address me by Logan, not Mr. Fry, if you are an adult. But it's lfry@rcsdk8.org. And I try to get back to your emails as quickly as I can. Sometimes it's instantaneous, other times it takes me a few hours, but I will always respond as quickly as I am able to your emails. And I appreciate you attending this virtual back to school night. Um, and I look forward to working with your children in the coming weeks. Thank you.